1, 2. Is this on?
Despite possessing plenty of talent, some wrestlers just don't get their due in WWE and end up being underutilized.
I had to chill out.
Why?
Because it wasn't what I was told in a nice way was you're not going to have anybody that wants to work with you. I go, why? I'm not dangerous. Well, it looks like you're hurting people. Well, that's my job.
For this video, we'll be looking at various different examples, such as legends coming back for one last run only to be disrespected.
When I eventually started wrestling after 9 months of being a GM, I wasn't having the matches I wanted to have. And not only that, but they were also having me job out quite a bit. I even tapped out the Drew McIntyre. He had me in my own ankle lock. You talk about rubbing it in my face. That's what they were doing.
To tag team stars getting the rug pulled out from underneath them after going off on their own.
I remember going to Vince about 4 months in, 3 to 4 months in. I said, if you just give me the opportunity to do this character the way I want to do it, it'll get over. But he never did. He never let me do it.
Not to mention those who got their big break, only to fail because of poor booking.
It's something that Vince was not a fan of. He literally told me, he's like, you sound too smart for your own good.
Today, we highlight 10 talented wrestlers WWE misused.
And I had a match, and then my daughter, she was like, Dad, how come you always lose? And that was tough, man. I didn't know what to say to her.
Mr. Perfect's return to WWF in 2002 got off to a terrific start as he was one of the final 4 in the Royal Rumble. Although we would quickly learn what Perfect's position was going to be upon coming back, since he was predominantly used in an enhancement role on the C shows.
Why did they let him get down to the final 4 if they didn't have a long-term deal planned?
Nostalgia, and Kurt being a great worker, and other guys wanting to work with Kurt.
Within a couple of weeks of him signing, though, it seemed like they had already given up on him. He made several of the syndicated shows, but never did much. The WWF tried to redo some of the skits that really got him over.
I do remember the vignettes, and they were shot at TV. They were shitty in comparison to the originals, but it just wasn't there this time around.
It was rare to see him get a win, which was unfortunate as this was no way to treat such a legend.
Quickly in the transmission. You're going to need to be the perfect pick into the ropes. Tazz has got a locked in. And Perfect is the sound when his butt starts beeping. He's back on it. That's the smartest thing I've ever seen. That was perfect. He's got a wedgie.
I think he understood that that was his role when he came back, you know, is to try and help some of the young guys, whether it's in the locker room with words of advice or whether it's in the ring and showing them and putting that advice into action.
He could see the light at the end of the tunnel. My run is almost over.
Perfect was let go following the plane ride from hell after the Insurrection UK pay-per-view. While in the air, Perfect and Brock Lesnar got into an amateur wrestling match and slammed into the emergency exit door, which scared the flight attendants.
You become concerned when two 250-pound plus guys start wrestling around near the emergency exit. I guess when everybody got together at TV, it was decided that
he started it and he needed to go.
Yeah.
And he had too much to drink is really the root of this. Is that fair?
From what I hear, yeah. A lot of people did.
Another wrestler whose later run with WWE completely missed the mark was Shelton Benjamin. Many fans feel he was underutilized in his first go-round with the company, as they seemed to go hot and cold with him all throughout. But in his second stint, there was absolutely no question the former gold standard was badly misused. Shelton wasn't crazy about coming in as part of a tag team with Chad Gable.
Let me introduce you to Shelton Benjamin.
But their time together was quite decent, as they appeared on a few pay-per-views. After Gable was drafted to Raw, Benjamin would get lost in the shuffle, making only sporadic appearances on screen. Shelton cut a good promo about winning the 2018 Money in the Bank, but he never got put in the match.
Money in the Bank, the match that I made famous. Some of the biggest highlights of my career have been in ladder matches, but the best highlight is yet to come.
Then there were some bizarre shifty ice skits that went nowhere.
Who do you think will win the WWE Championship at Extreme Rules?
It wasn't until being paired with the Hurt Business that Benjamin finally had something to sink his teeth into again. They had a great run, which was cut short far too soon.
When I initially got the news, I went to Vince and I was like, I've been there, I returned there, I've been there for a few years with nothing happening. And I was like, I finally have something that we can actually work with that can elevate me. And his comment to me was, we've gone as far as we can with the Hurt Business.
I mean, it started, it seemed.
Yeah, nothing I can do for this person seems to help. Like, I'd
be good enough.
Yeah, nothing's good enough. You know, I was really just insulted, and I knew then, like, I don't really have a future here. At this point, this is just a job.
Shelton struggled to get TV time on Raw following their split. Instead of appearing mostly on Main Event, Benjamin was released from his contract in September 2023. After the Dudleys were split up in the 2002 draft, it was D-Von's chance to fulfill his dream of being a single star. After such a successful tag run, he borrowed from his mother and father's background in the Baptist church to become a preacher just like them. Reverend D-Von was Vince McMahon's crooked spiritual advisor.
You have a deal. My brother testified.
And collect money from fans for the so-called D-Von Building Fund, while also delivering religious sermons.
Pick me up. He turned me around. He set my feet on solid ground. Oh, testify. You see, masturbation, that's a sin. Oh, that's a sin!
D-Von played the gimmick to perfection, but after a brilliant start, the Reverend's television time became more limited as the months progressed. This was due to Paul Heyman taking over as head writer of SmackDown. Bruce Pritchard, who previously played the Brother Love Evangelist character, had been helping D-Von prior to Heyman's appointment. However, Paul, and eventually even Vince, didn't have the same vision anymore, and thus Dudley was relegated to Velocity, where he barely got any speaking time, and therefore had no opportunity to showcase the Reverend character anymore.
I just think that D-Von had too many voices, you know, coming at him with different ways to do it.
I remember going to Vince about 4 months in, 3 to 4 months in. I said, if you just give me the opportunity to do this character the way I want to do it, it'll get over. But he never did. He never let me do it.
Flying everybody home! What the heck? Oh, no. I'm going to say a few All-Fathers and a few Hail Marys.
I can understand if the character wasn't going well, if the people weren't responding, but the people were responding. But again, like I said, you played a one man and one man only, and that's Vince. And at that time, he wasn't excited about the character. So
by November, D-Von was back teaming with Bubba again over on Raw. These days, Reverend D-Von may be best remembered for introducing Dave Bautista to the main roster. Although their alliance was brief and Batista was still very green, it's interesting to look back at how he got his start. Gran Metalik was one of the most outstanding wrestlers on the roster during his time with WWE, but you would have never known that based on his booking, and how toned down his matches were compared to what the luchador was truly capable of.
Un luchador diferente, ¿no? Que hace totalmente cosas diferentes.
Known as El Rey de las Cuerdas, the king of the ropes!
Metalik came in hot with strong performances in the Cruiserweight Classic.
Gran Metalik! Holy cow!
He should have been one of the standout competitors on the 205 Live roster.
Oh, look out! Over the top rope and down goes Neville.
But despite being among the division's most accomplished talents between the ropes, the luchador never got a one-on-one match for the actual Cruiserweight title in WWE.
With a gut like that, somebody needs to bring a scale out of here, because there's no way you're under 205.
Metalik also only won 2 singles matches on Raw and SmackDown during his entire 5-year run with the company.
Top rope delivers the elbow to Nakamura. Stacks him up, shoulders are down. Gran Metalik is pinned Shinsuke Nakamura.
To the cover on Miz. Oh my gosh, the Miz.
He was later a part of the Lucha House Party trio, but they were mostly used to put over other wrestlers.
Oh God, oh my God. Hurricane right from the top of the pod. And now Metalik, wow, New Day take it out.
Metalik requested his release at the end of 2021 due to lack of opportunities. Sin Cara was another lucha star who quit WWE due to not being happy with his place on the card, though we're not referring to Mystico, who initially donned the mask, but rather Hunico, who took over the reins full-time at the end of 2013. However, he wasn't afforded the same opportunities as the original. The second Sin Cara received a small push at first, though it wasn't long until he was frequently on the losing end. Despite this, he continued to move plenty of merchandise, such as action figures, while also being featured in a movie with Scooby-Doo. But none of this translated to in-ring success. Even though the PG era was in full swing, goofier acts like Los Matadores received more exposure on TV because they had a miniature bull mascot. A successful spell in NXT tagging with Kalisto saw Sin Cara return to the main roster, where he began to pick up some wins again, while also featuring on pay-per-views.
He's being held hostage by... No, man! No! Look at this. It's not gonna happen right now. Sin Cara!
When Kalisto got drafted to SmackDown in 2016, Sin Cara was back to doing jobs on a regular basis. This continued until a 1-month push came out of nowhere against Baron Corbin for the US title.
Oh my God! Now to the top of the ring post! Wow! There goes Corbin!
However, Sin Cara was ultimately unable to capture gold. During this time, his reactions on house shows remained strong while also doing public appearances and community outreach, despite not being used on television much.
With his son, his family, and some of those first-team responders, I mean, Sin Cara has one of the biggest hearts in all of the WWE.
For the next 2 years, it felt like the only time we saw the masked man was when he was putting over Andrade. Then after being told by Raw's head of creative Paul Heyman that the Sin Cara character was dead, the luchador knew it was time to go, officially making his exit in December 2019.
And I had a match, and then my daughter, she was like, Dad, how come you always lose? And that was tough, man. I didn't know what to say to her. It was actually like, I didn't know what to say to her. I was like, oh, no, don't. I remember I was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just my job, baby. Like, I get paid the same. When I say something like that, I didn't know what to say.
Colt Cabana wasn't your typical WWE star, but there was definitely a place for him on the roster, especially as a comedy act, given his abilities and popularity on the independent scene. He was signed after numerous wrestlers suggested him to the office, but Colt ended up being used exclusively as a jobber, who sometimes got an entrance.
I'm in a box. I'm trapped in a box. Hey, there I am! Wait, two Scotty Goldmans in two different places at the same time?
Mayhem Monday, this Monday night, as you see the team of Funaki and Scotty Goldman. Sound like a law firm from Manhattan.
He was referred to as Scotty Goldman due to his Jewish heritage, which he explained in an interview with the Canadian Jewish News and Wrestling Then and Now.
I had a meeting with Vince McMahon. It was the only meeting I had with him. And I remember him asking me, like, are you Jewish? And I said, like, I am, but I'm not like a super Jew. And that was the only time I made him laugh. But hindsight, 15 years later, is I think I should have asked, do you have a gimmick in your mind that you haven't given to a wrestler that you would love, that you would like to see played out? Then he's going to give me something that is his idea.
Even though he lost every match on TV, Cabana had a WWE.com web show called What's Crackin', which was ahead of its time in some ways.
You know it. Just
Though Colt wasn't very comfortable with the show's branding, which he felt went overboard with the Jewish theme.
Like, instead of a Batman symbol, it was like a Jewish star. So, like, my humor didn't have really any Jewish, but like they kind of forced it in. I thought it was a bit anti-Semitic. Like, I really didn't like it, but in the WWE, the culture is so wild.
He wanted to be the WWE's version of Seth Rogen or Jonah Hill, but the older writers weren't interested, likely because they didn't know who either star was, since the company always seemed to be behind the curve when it came to what was popular outside the ring. Cabana was even one of the most viewed wrestlers on WWE's short-lived social media network. He was eventually fired after being defeated by Umaga on the February 17, 2009 SmackDown. The match had to be recorded twice, although Colt was never given a reason as to why. Cabana has had a few different offers to return since, under various roles, but turned each of them down and has no regrets about doing so. In NXT, Keith Lee was one of the most must-see performers on the brand. He always impressed, and fans believed surely there was no way the powers that be could screw him once Lee moved up to the main roster. Keith even received his own 24 documentary on the WWE Network, which included many legends praising him and showing how hopes were high upon joining Monday Night Raw. Vince McMahon, however, did not share all these sentiments. He immediately tried to change Lee, from having him tone down his style in the ring to covering up his physique. Cameras picked up Vince's first interaction with Lee after becoming a Raw talent, with the chairman making it known how things had to change. Lee scored some victories early on, but these wins turned to losses after less than 2 months.
For sure. Oh, and a kick to the face. Braun Strowman into the cover. Wow. Oh, and off the ropes again. How is Lee? Oh, and a chop block. Beautiful. And Miz stacking up, and they finally do it.
The momentum he had from NXT faded out. Then an illness suffered at the start of 2021 saw Keith miss out on winning the US title, which had originally been planned. After Lee returned in the summer, he was given the Bearcat moniker by Vince, but wasn't being featured enough on screen to build any sort of momentum. The ship had sailed on Keith gaining a foothold in WWE as he was released in November 2021.
My cadence, the way that I seem very thoughtful about how I deliver things, my choice of diction, all of those things, is something that Vince was not a fan of. In terms of, he wanted some intense guy, and I think that I can be intense, but I need a reason to be intense. He literally told me, he's like, you sound too smart for your own good.
Tazz came to WWF from ECW to much fanfare, but it all peaked on the very first night at the Royal Rumble 2000 inside MSG. Tazz believes the massive pop he received at the Garden caused him more harm than good, since it symbolized how he wasn't a WWF creation. Then, during his subsequent match with Kurt Angle, the ECW legend thinks a moment of hesitation on a German suplex signaled to the back that he was unsafe.
Oh no, watch yourself, Kurt. Tazz, waistline. Oh my gosh.
Tazz was not dangerous. That was my idea. I told Tazz to give me a German suplex and throw me really high in the air, and I would flip over to my stomach. That was all my call, and I'm not sure why Tazz didn't tell the office that I'm the one that chose the move. Tazz was never dangerous with his suplex.
The human suplex machine was then put up against people such as the Mean Street Posse, Prince Albert, and the Big Boss Man. The fact Tazz was being programmed with such lower card talent right from the jump did him no favors, especially since the Radicals, who came in from WCW a few weeks after Tazz, were working main events featuring the likes of Cactus Jack and Triple H. Tazz knew his run was doomed early on and decided to change his attire, the reason being that he didn't want to associate his ECW look with his awful WWF stint.
You know, I started out for a couple of matches doing my same style I did in ECW. Suplexes, submissions, joint locks, and I had to chill out.
Why?
Because it wasn't what I was told in a nice way was you're not going to have anybody that wants to work with you. I go, why? I'm not dangerous. Well, it looks like you're hurting people. Well, that's my job.
So I see. So guys don't want to be, the WWE guys at that time maybe don't want to be in the ring with a guy who's not 6 feet tall, who's looking like he's kicking their ass.
Correct. And it wasn't the talent that was saying that. I felt the office in WWF at the time felt like, you know what? I don't think this is going to create a bad vibe amongst our locker room.
Being easily beaten by WWF champ Triple H on a Philadelphia SmackDown in April while holding the ECW title may have been the nail in the coffin for Tazz.
There's two! It's over! Triple H defeats Tazz!
This would be the last time he was seen as anything close to the main event or even upper card.
Cover by Crash! Hook of the leg! Nobody's gonna get up after that! Crash Holly retains his title! The Big Show in trouble! He's not out! He's 500 pounds! Crashing into Tazz! Breaking the hold! Look! Tazz! Look out! Set up one! Oh! Tazz has hammered! Tazz never got out of the blocks!
His best work over the next few years came as an announcer rather than a wrestler, and that's even before he stopped wrestling and took over commentating full-time in 2002.
Look at Tazz! This man was a killer! He was a machine! He was a wrestler! And now he's a fat, little, obnoxious color commentator, and not even a good one!
Tazz may have had an amazing debut in the Federation, but it was truly all downhill from there.
He was just another victim!
After joining WWF in the fall of 2000, Raven was paired with his fellow ECW icon Tazz, which given his position on the card wasn't ideal.
What about me? What about Raven?
In saying that, Raven found himself in a better spot than Tazz by the start of 01, since Raven did well in the hardcore division as the champion. He stuck around the mid-card during the invasion, but 2002 was where things really began to fall off a cliff. Raven was banished to Sunday Night Heat after being pinned in a loser leaves Raw match versus Tommy Dreamer, quite the far cry from their days wrestling in ECW's most personal feud.
And Raven and his bad hair are going.
While on Heat, Raven was given the green light by the higher-ups to craft a 7 Deadly Sins storyline to his liking. However, he was mostly working with jobbers and lower card talent, as opposed to the main eventers the story was intended for. The angle was scrapped after a short time, and Raven was released at the start of 03. Raven said he was so disillusioned with his time in WWF that he stopped watching wrestling altogether in 2000 and never tuned back in.
You said that you overheard Vince McMahon say, "Who the F hired Raven?"
No, I didn't overhear. Michael Hayes told me that he heard that.
Michael Hayes said it.
Michael Hayes said that he was in a booking meeting and Vince said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about me? What about Raven? Quote the Raven, nevermore. You suck. Quote Stone Cold, nevermore.
Earlier we spoke about a legend in Mr. Perfect coming back for one more run and being jobbed out, and the same is true for Kurt Angle in WWE. Angle was finally home, but Vince wasn't going to forget his past issues and leaving for TNA 11 years earlier. This is likely why the chairman waited to put Kurt in the ring to see if he could really trust him. The Olympic gold medalist was ready to compete, as seen from his great spell on the indies, but McMahon instead made Kurt Raw general manager. Vince had Angle reciting pages of unnatural scripted promos, while not being allowed to showcase his charisma. This was a mistake and a huge waste of a physically fit Angle. Kurt did well wrestling a few one-off matches, but by the time he was allowed to wrestle on a regular basis, again over a year later, it was too late. He had spent too long inactive from competition, which meant he lost a step and was much slower between the ropes.
Oh, the straps come down. That's bad news. Oh. And Elias eliminates the Raw general manager.
When I eventually started wrestling after 9 months of being a GM, I wasn't having the matches I wanted to have. And not only that, but they were also having me job out quite a bit. I even tapped out the Drew McIntyre. He had me in my own ankle lock. You talk about rubbing it in my face. That's what they were doing.
And Curtis, he's got to tap out.
Oh my God.
Even still, the way Angle was booked was highly disrespectful, since he was made to do clean jobs in short matches against mid-carders.
You know, they kind of stuck it to me. It just was a little crazy how they really didn't want to do anything with me. They just wanted me to do jobs for the wrestlers. And
Kurt believes this may have been Vince's way of getting back at him for how things went down in 2006. Things came to a head at WrestleMania 35, where Angle lost his retirement match in 6 minutes to Baron Corbin.
I'm not crazy about wrestling Baron. only because of his status at the time. But I think maybe the company might have been a little bitter about my departure in 2006 and, you know, heading to TNA for 11 years and then coming back.
When it was mentioned in a production meeting how much fans hated the idea of this matchup, McMahon laughed it off and said F the fans. Now if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our similar video on 10 WWE gimmicks that were set up to fail but got over. Hope you have a great day and I'll see you next time.